Everyone likes Mario Kart. It's a fun game series that you can play with friends and people across the globe. But there's another way people play Mario Kart, and in fact they could continuously play the same outdated game to this day, not because they can't play the new stuff, but because they want to focus solely on becoming the best at this one thing in particular, grinding to pull off time trial world records. I can think of no better person that embodies this than DKSC for life, the gamer who only plays Mario Kart Wii's DK Summit. Why only DK Summit though? If he's still pushing for a world record in Mario Kart Wii, why not just do all the tracks? That's what I asked him, but before that, I'd have to get a little bit of background. So, first thing, how long have you been competitively playing Mario Kart Wii for? And when did you decide you wanted to set records in the game?
I don't think I've discussed this publicly before, but I started playing in late 2009, and within a year, I was burnt out. I wasn't good at time trials, I was struggling online, and I loved the game, but I had no idea what I was doing. It was around this time that I met a player named Hahe321, the former world record holder of DK Summit, and he agreed to take me under his wing and train me on DK Summit so that I could finally get a good time in the game. He'd watch me play and coach me into the early morning hours for weeks until I finally was able to get the time I always wanted, a regional top 10.
Ooh.
I was so happy, I was satisfied, I was ready to quit time trialing for good. But the crazy thing is, after months of talking, Hahe and I realized something. My grandparents lived 6 doors down from him.
What?
Yeah, I am 100% serious. So we talked about it and we agreed to meet up in person. And the moment Hahe and I met, I knew I wasn't content anymore. But what's crazy about it, the day Hahe and I first started talking on Skype, it was November 2010. I live in Arizona, right? He lives in Arkansas. I was visiting my grandparents' neighborhood that day. And I rode my grandpa's bike around the neighborhood. I rode past Hahe's house. I didn't even know it was his home. I didn't even know he lived in Arkansas. And just coincidentally, we started talking on Skype a few hours later for the first time.
Wow.
It sounds like a complete fabrication, but no, it's the God's honest truth.
No, that's just, it's a small world, as they say. Now, I know it's like the big elephant in the room I've got to ask. Why only DK Summit? And were there any other tracks that you wanted to or did go for?
So it took me 19 months after meeting Hahe to finally get my first world record on DK Summit. And when I got it, I only got it by 1 millisecond, beating a Japanese player named Wyvern. And Wyvern returned to the track literally just hours after I got the record. So I knew I had to keep pushing down the time, and I knew that DK Summit had to be my only focus. I've had a few worldwide top 10 times in Mario Kart Wii over the years. The only other track I've ever grinded for world record was Mount Wario in Mario Kart 8. I had to grind for months after the game's release just to stay on top. And my family was traveling a lot at the time, so I would just take my Wii U with me on the trips just so I could keep playing. I've actually set a world record on Mount Wario in 3 different states: Arizona, where I live, Tennessee, and even Alaska. There's an old photo of my setup in the Tennessee hotel room where I put the TV on top of a dresser and I put a chair on top of the couch with the cushions removed just so I could be as comfortable as possible when time trialing.
Wow.
That was actually the last Mario Kart 8 time I ever set, so I guess I ended it on a high note.
While over the years he hasn't exclusively done DK Summit, after getting other personally rewarding times, he'd once again hit the slopes. But what was so special about this course from a 15-plus-year-old game? Well, you see, this course would be a lot more intense and strategic than you may think. This would come from the track shortcut. The way DK Summit is laid out, you start by shooting yourself from a cannon onto a mountain, and then work your way back down the mountain. But there's a section with 2 curves that go around a couple chasms. While normally you'd want to follow the road to get past this section, it was found that you could instead jump over the chasms to save more time.
It's been 12 agonizing years since the current shortcut was discovered. This can save you more than a second over the old shortcut, which involved coming to an almost complete stop before the first chasm and drifting left over the second one. So there has been some evolution with the cut over the years. Another important strategy that was found a few years after the game's release was the zipper wheelie. It'll save you around 0.2 or so if done properly, but it's risky to go for because it makes the last trick so much more difficult. And we now have to attempt the zipper wheelie and current shortcut all 3 laps just to get a good time. So
wow. No, I mean, I've watched your streams quite a few times, and I can understand, like, yeah, it definitely looks hard. Especially if you're on, say, record pace and, you know, maybe your nerves start going a little bit.
Sure, and I think one of the most difficult things about this track is the Shy Guys. There's so much you have to think ahead on when it comes to them. You know, lap 1, lap 2, they'll be in your way. They'll instantly kill your run if you collide with them, obviously. And they could even instantly kill your run just when you're trying to dodge them. So depending on how fast you're going or how slow you're going, you have to adjust how you approach the zipper several seconds in advance and potentially delay your zipper wheelie, start it sooner, and so on. There have been hundreds and hundreds of times where I'm going just a little bit too fast and just a little bit too slow. I'm just in the middle of no man's land where I can't even slow myself down to avoid the Shy Guy lap 1 because it'll kill the run. I have to just try and pray that I can go underneath it. But the Shy Guy's hitboxes are so wide that it's almost impossible unless you have a really, really good lap 1 to go underneath at lap 1. And there's one Shy Guy you have to worry about lap 1, but there's 2 at the end of lap 2. And I have lost probably 50, maybe 60 or 70 paces just on those 2 Shy Guys at the end of lap 2.
Evidently, this track can be brutal if you're trying to go for a really good time. So many small things can add up to turn something that sounds sort of feasible into a completely unreliable mess. But it's more than just the Shy Guys and the fast zipper wheelie strategy that are the problem.
So the current shortcut is very difficult. What makes this track excruciatingly difficult is not just the shortcut, but the mogul section before it. You actually land differently at the end of the moguls every single time. It may be slight, so slight that it's not visible to the naked eye, or it may be so drastic that it immediately kills your run. But in all 22 of my records on the track, every landing I've gotten at the end of the moguls has been different. This means you have to rapidly improvise your approach to the shortcut every attempt, especially depending on the amount of speed you land with. You'll have to adjust your angle, alter your wheelie timing, drift right sooner or later, let go of A sooner or later, and so on. There are literally hundreds of different landing scenarios, and all of this is just to get to the shortcut. For the shortcut itself, you have to have the correct angle, enough speed, correct tilt, and hop within an, at best, 2-frame window when landing on the second chasm. And then, sometimes, you'll land on the wrong pixels and just fail anyway. This is why, in my opinion, DK Summit is the most difficult track in this game, which is why I've had to grind it for so long.
Wow, that's... I didn't realize it was that deep. I mean, I knew it was hard, but I didn't think it was that intense. Jeez.
Oh, it's an absolute nightmare.
Just to clarify, the moguls you were talking about, that's those little hills in the snow, right?
Correct, yes. And they don't change. There's no movement from them. It's just there's thousands of trickable surfaces on those moguls so that even if you approach them with incredible consistency, you're always going to have a slightly different result every single time. And it's really difficult to even approach them with consistency because how you drift out of the shroom spot is going to directly affect what kind of moguls you get. So yeah, it's very hard.
Prior to talking with DKSC for Life, otherwise known as Blake, I had no clue just how in-depth this particular track went. From an outside perspective, it just seems like someone playing only one track can be very boring. But in reality, this is truly the ultimate test of patience, dedicating more than a decade to maintain dominance over a very elaborate 3-lap gauntlet of decision-making and incredibly quick reaction times. But of course, Blake isn't the only one who's been on the scene.
My greatest rival, without a doubt, is Connor. In 2017, Connor beat me just days before my 5-year anniversary of holding the record. And I didn't get it back until January 2020. Connor beat me again this past January, just days before my 4-year anniversary. And it took me almost all year to get the record back. So yes, Connor is by far my greatest rival.
I think I noticed, I was researching your YouTube channel just to see, because I think you made a little skit video about a rival.
Yeah, that was about Julian, and there's some questions about Julian's run, whether or not it's legitimate. And now I'm a competitor, right? So whether it's legitimate or not, whether you think it's legitimate or not, if there's one person out there that thinks it's real, that's enough motivation for me to go out and beat it. So that's what I did.
For brief context, at the beginning of 2024, just 12 days after setting a new record on DK Summit, he was beaten by a different player named Julian. Or was he? Some people claim that Julian's run is fake, though there are other runs Julian submitted to leaderboards. This particular time of 144.514 has not been accepted as an actual run anywhere. It really does make you wonder whether or not it's legit, but that's not super important, because Blake's track record is insane, and to this day, he continues to livestream attempts and break barriers. Now, if you're watching a DKSC for life stream, you'll probably hear terms like BKS, BKT, and BKP. But just what do these abbreviations mean?
That's a great question. So BKS stands for Best Known Split, or lap, that uses a single shroom. On DK Summit, my lap 1 BKS is actually classified as lap 2 and lap 3 BKS because the track doesn't change throughout the run, unlike, say, Moonview Highway that has the different car patterns each lap. BKT stands for Best Known Time, which is used for categories with unofficial leaderboards like Shroomless, where you can't use any mushrooms. The only categories with official leaderboards are the 3-lap, flap, and cart. BKP stands for Best Known Pace, which is the fastest combination of lap 1 and lap 2 ever driven. This means you have the best possible chance of getting the record on lap 3. Also important to note, DKSC stands for DK Snowboard Cross, which is the European name for DK Summit, and we just use those names interchangeably.
Right, because I was going to mention that too, like the whole DKSC for life thing. You know, if you're from the US, would you be considered DKS for life if we're going with DK Summit?
What's silly is I am from the US, but I just thought DKSC sounded cooler than DKS.
It definitely does.
But conversely, I like how DK Summit sounds better than DK Snowboard Cross, so I don't know, I'm weird.
Yeah, hey, no, I mean, I understand that it does sound like it rolls off the tongue better. Now, DKSC for life is not just a gamer, but also does other interesting stuff on the side. For example, he interviews famous people about his records. So, in the past, you've interviewed different people, including some athletes and even on the phone with Nintendo themselves, about your DKSC records.
I actually have a world record in that game, on the course DK Summit, and I was wondering, will you, give me any sort of promotion, some sort of acknowledgement on your website, or...
I'm really curious, what's the story behind those, and are you interested in any future interviews, or are those just mere memories for now?
So the story is, I thought it'd be funny. And I've never stopped trying to get those interviews. I've just been incredibly unlucky these past 11 years. I've randomly seen several celebrities in public, but I've either been too slow or didn't realize it was them until it was too late. I've seen Khloe Kardashian, Brendan Urie, Nicolas Cage, Scott Steiner, Kobe Bryant, Danny Sexbang, but I failed. All of them.
Oh my god. I can just imagine that. Wow, that's insane.
So I've never stopped trying. Yeah, I've been blowing it, so.
No. Hey, listen, that would have been sick to see too, but I mean, you got some people, like I said, you got some athletes. And I'm also curious too, the people that you did interview, how did you manage to get to them to ask these questions?
I charmed them and buttered up to them as much as I could prior to it. I went out of my way to compliment Bill Walton's hair as much as I could. I was able to connect with him on a spiritual level because he used to be a redhead, and you know, I'm of course a redhead myself. So yeah, anyway, that's just one example.
As you can imagine, most of these people wouldn't know what to say in response.
Would you perhaps be impressed if I told you that I had a video game with them on the course of DK Summit in the game Mario Kart League?
I'm mostly impressed with your courage.
But to be honest, you just spoke a language that I don't know.
Actually, I'm a video game guy.
Are you really?
Yeah.
You'd be impressed? Really?
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. Yeah, I'd be impressed.
I mean, it's very random, and it's a comedy bit, but you gotta admit, Blake is a funny mother.
Baby! Yeah, mama! I wanna my mother, baby! I'm sorry, everyone. I got carried away there. That wasn't cool. I don't want to my mother.
But getting back on topic with DK Summit, for over a year, he held the world record with the first ever 144. This record would last until January 2024, when his longtime biggest rival Connor struck back with a time that was only less than the third of a second better. As mentioned previously, it took a long time just for him to try and come back from that, given the relentless factors at play in the track. But finally, after about 9 months, he once again came back with an improvement of less than a tenth of a second. But at this point, he's still streaming attempts of DK Summit, so what would the end time goal be?
So I've already achieved my end goal of the 144. I wanted that time for years, but when I got it, the lap 3 was the fastest ever driven. And with a faster lap 2, the 144 could have been skipped completely. And I realized no matter how impossibly hard it may be or how long it might take, that the 143 is technically possible. And in my most recent record, I once again got the fastest ever lap 3. So I know that I can clutch out the lap 3s, but the problem is getting there. When most recently trying to get the record back, I would sometimes go weeks without getting to lap 3 on an actual pace. Right now, because my lap 1 BKS can be considered BKS for lap 2 and lap 3, the best splits add up to an approximate time of about 143.650 or so. I don't think that'll ever be done. I think it's a major stretch just for the 143 to be achieved, because you have to have everything go right each lap, all 3 laps. So yeah, we'll see if it ever happens, but I'm definitely gonna try.
Now, I feel like I have to ask this too. If, say, you got that 143 and you're like, okay, I do not think this can be pushed any lower, would you still continue to stream? Or maybe not so much?
There are some other things that I've wanted to try. Like, for example, I've always wanted to try Crazy Taxi competitively.
Really?
Yeah, I've loved that game for 20 years. And when I was learning how to drive, my dad would actually make me play that game every day.
What?
I don't know why. I don't know why, but to his credit, I'm still alive.
Wow.
I mean, I've had several car accidents, but that's besides the point. I was all set. I was ready for anything when I took my first road test. My dad, say what you want about my old man, he will make sure you're prepared for driving. The first time I was ever behind the wheel with him in the car, we were just driving around in my neighborhood, right? And all of a sudden, you know, he was being like, okay, Blake, you know, slow down here and stop here. All of a sudden, he was like, Blake, there's a bumblebee! Oh my god! And he started flailing his arms everywhere and like started hitting the steering wheel. And there wasn't even a bee. He was just messing with me.
What?
He was just doing it he was like, oh, I'm just seeing how focused you stayed.
Holy. Well, that's a way to test.
He's a complete lunatic. But I was definitely ready for the driving test.
I guess so. I don't see how you wouldn't be with that. But
I want to get flap record back from Connor on DK Summit. And then the main thing that I would like to do, besides, you know, getting the 143, obviously, is I want to try blindfold DK Summit.
Oh.
Now I have no idea if it's even possible. It's honestly ridiculous just to even think about doing, but I want to try.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I know I recently interviewed Bubzia, the blindfolded Mario 64 runner, and he was talking about the ways that he managed to get around doing Mario 64 blindfolded, because, you know, 3D game, 360 degrees of movement, like, that's insane. So I feel like, if anything, there'd definitely be a possibility for DK Summit blindfolded, even if it's like taking safe strats rather than doing the cut, because I don't imagine how feasible doing the cut would be.
Yeah, I have no idea, honestly. It wasn't until Bubzia mentioned the sound cues that I had realized that, okay, maybe I could try. But yeah, we'll see. It's going to be an extremely difficult challenge for sure, just to even get into the midway point of lap 1, honestly, much less the second half being done. But
yeah,
we'll see what happens. I think if I've learned anything about myself over the 15 years that I've played this game, is that the grind never stops. So yeah.
It's very inspiring to see someone put in the time and effort to improve at something they love. In the end, it doesn't matter if it's from an older game in the series, as long as that person has enough passion and dedication to perfecting a craft. I feel like that's something that can be pretty admirable. Blake still goes live on his Twitch channel, DKSC for Life, which you can check out in the description below. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, share your thoughts in the comments below. But with that being said, thank you for watching, and until next time, take care and peace.